You're listening to Soundside. I'm Maliha Sayed. When you step into the Seattle Asian Art Museum's new exhibit, you feel small. You're surrounded by light, blocks of color reaching across the floor, creeping up the walls. The art takes up space, immersing you in light and shadow as though you've entered another world. Steel cubes carved with meticulous designs hang from the ceiling. Papercraft covered in embroidery line the walls, and what looks like a giant doily hangs from strings by the entrance, all lit to project intricate patterns across the space. This is Geometry of Light, an exhibit that the museum opened in late August, and the artist behind it is Anila Quayyum Agha. She's the first Pakistani American to ever have a solo exhibit at the Seattle Art Museum, which is the parent institute of the Seattle Asian Art Museum. Geometry of Light is on display until April, so we have Anila here in the studio to tell us more. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
So can you help listeners understand what these displays look like? Like when someone walks into a room at the Seattle Asian Art Museum, what are they going to see?
I think they're going to see something that's sort of awe-inspiring, slightly maybe on the spiritual side, especially if people are familiar with going into churches that may be Gothic and the stained glass, letting in light. It evokes those types of feelings because the light can work in mysterious ways. As far as the light can travel, it travels. And because I have contained the light inside a cube that is constructed out of steel, and I painted beautiful colors, and I paint the walls a beautiful color, the reflection with the light inside the cube casts shadows, and they also travel. So since it's a cube, the shadows are above you, below you, and all around you. And so you're basically enveloped by the shadows that are created because of the light. Without the light, the shadows are not there, and without the shadows, the light is not there. So it's sort of like a symbiotic relationship.
And so each room has one steel structure, right? Mm-hmm. Are they all suspended from the ceiling?
So one is a cube that's suspended in the air. There's another piece that's sort of more like a relief piece, and it's also suspended by two cables. And then there's a third piece that looks like a row house that's actually placed on a pedestal on the ground. The space is quite large, but it's not complete unless there is somebody walking around, because that makes it kinetic. And it allows people to walk around, and since they are covered with shadows, it sort of camouflages them a little bit. It allows people to come in without judgment often, because as they enter, they are immediately inspired by what they're seeing around them. It's kind of a lovely feeling that you're kind of bathed in this immersive environment. And so what I've noticed is that once people are in there, they start moving around like they're dancers maybe, or they're just walking around and looking at the shadows, and they turn towards the artwork and away from the artwork. And so the interaction is very interesting, and especially when you see two strangers walk towards each other and say, "Oh my God, this is lovely." And so it's a point of contact, connection. And I think humans are often always, or almost always, looking for connection with other humans.
And within these designs, from what I've seen, it looks like there's floral imagery or nature imagery. Is that consistent throughout all of them?
Well, so the art of the Islamic world was given the title Art and Architecture of the Islamic World, or Islamic Art and Architecture. My tendency, because I come from Lahore, I have a deeper love of geometry and organic, floral, nature-inspired themes, because I come from the city of gardens, as Lahore is known. And so much of the work is fragments of bits and pieces I've collected through textiles, through building facades, through ancient buildings, through tile work. And so much of the patterning that is in my work comes from the art and architecture of the Islamic world, but it starts from there. It's like me going back to my origins, and then I diversify it. And so you won't be able to find all of the same patterns from a beautiful despair, the cube that is here in Seattle, in any single building or any single textile out there in the world. You would have to find multiple fragments to create the whole. And then, of course, my own aesthetic makes the pattern work together. So this particular piece, A Beautiful Despair, is actually a combination of multiple regions of the world. So it's not just from South Asia, but it's also inspired by old Persian textiles and architecture. It's also inspired by Turkish textiles and architecture. And so there are fragments, multiple fragments that I kind of put together. And if you look at it closely on the side, you will see a cross in it, you will see a diamond in it, you'll see all sorts of things. And if you're really interested in patterning, then you can kind of start identifying where they come from.
We touched on this a little bit, but you're the first Pakistani American artist to have a solo exhibition at the Seattle Art Museum. What does that mean to you? Is it surprising, or has that been pretty common when you've presented around the country?
It's quite common. I don't think that, like I've shown a couple of times in Alabama, and they've never shown a Pakistani American artist there. I've shown in South Carolina. I don't think that they've had a Pakistani American artist there. But I could be wrong. I don't know the entire history of those museums. I've shown in Savannah, in Georgia. And again, I think I may have been the first Pakistani artist there. But it's quite common that, South Asian artists often are not given such a big part of the pie. And in recent times, if you noticed, and gratefully and, deservedly, African American artists are being given some, purviews and some, solo exhibitions. But I think it may take another 10 years for South Asians to catch up. So it means a great deal. It means so much that, Seattle Art Museum was interested in my work and brought me here. And I think that shows that there's a lot of interest in diverse voices here. I wish that it was more common with all of the U.S. and we had a pie that could be distributed more equitably between the various backgrounds of people. Like, for example, Native American people, they should be totally given an opportunity to exhibit. South Asians, Middle Eastern, East Asians. Asia is a huge continent. I think there should be more curators dealing with Asia as a whole. It often occurs to me that we have very limited expertise that deals with large tracts of land or regions. And so some people get lost in the shuffle.
You explore a lot of themes in your work: gender, spirituality, belonging. What are some of the ideas that you're bringing into Geometry of Light? What themes are you hoping people walk away with?
So in the beginning, I think it was all about explaining to people where I came from, because there was a lot of misconception of what Pakistan was all about. And then after that, I realized that it was not just about explaining my own identity, but also dealing with the idea of like how women's work is very important. Because I was often given this spiel that women's work is not important enough because it's too decorative. It's there's too much embroidery, there's too much this, you're using textiles and blah, blah, blah. So it was always this constant dialogue of craft versus fine art. And I believe I'm a fine artist, but I like to use craft in my work. So it was work about me, work about women, and then I decided that all the work would use some type of element that was considered feminine to create feminist work. And so I started using materials such as pattern or textiles such as thread or beads as part of my flat work and pattern in my large sculptures. And then the last through line that has become very apparent is that it became about the environment, about the climate change. And for me, I believe that unless the richer Euro-Western nations start paying attention, the colonized people, the past colonized people of the world are again going to pay the price of human greed.
Why did that feel like a medium to convey some of these themes and talk about these themes? What was it about those particular structures that felt conducive to it?
Well, it was because I'm a South Asian woman, and I was told that you will never, well, I don't know if I was specifically told that I would never succeed, but people quite often mentioned to me that it would be difficult to succeed, especially as an artist, but especially as a female South Asian artist, immigrant artist. And so I think these structures kind of started growing bigger and bigger because I wanted to sort of enter the male domain, because I was told I couldn't be in public spaces. I was often in Pakistan, because of the patriarchal nature of that culture. And then when I moved here to the U.S. as an immigrant, I was often kind of disallowed from doing certain things or being a certain way. And so I think what I decided was that I will occupy the biggest space I can. And because of that, I started becoming very interested in installation work that would allow me to occupy space, even if it starts from a small object, somehow use light as an element to make the space bigger and more feminine. So thus it becomes a feminist space, which allows everybody to be part of it. And I truly believe in inclusivity, and I thought that, not just about women, but minorities and LGBTQ and people who often live on the outskirts of, the inner circle. And for the longest time, I lived on the outskirts of the inner circle. And so it was really important to occupy the space that an architect would, which is often a job that men have, or an engineer's position, or just the male space. Use steel to create work that is so strong yet looks so fragile and so delicate. And so it was about the contradiction of here I'm being assigned a small space, but I'm going to take this much space and make it as big as possible to sort of ensure that people who follow behind would also understand that it's their right to take as much space as they need. And that was the impetus.
Do you have a favorite piece of art right now, or one that holds a really particular special place in your heart at the Seattle Asian Art Museum? Is there one that's maybe near and dear to you?
I think what I love about that This Is Not a Refuge piece is that it deals with the idea of immigrants. It's very personal to me. I think it's also talking about the divisive narrative that we have been provided in recent times, where immigrants are the problem, and creating borders or situations where they can be picked up and sent back somewhere where they don't even belong anymore. So they are kind of living in this no man's land kind of thing. And so this is not a refuge, really is a house structure that's kind of placed on the ground with no exit or door that allows you to be part of it. And that was because I removed the door because I thought people are living without agency now. But that work was inspired by my mother's bookrest, which was carved in walnut wood. And so I designed that piece thinking about how America's reputation overseas has become slightly tarnished over the years. And so when I was building that first and the second piece, the one that's at the Seattle Asian Art Museum is the second of the refuge pieces, and it's slightly smaller. You cannot go inside it. But it's about the lack of privacy, the lack of real comfort. I mean, people seek home and safety. That is one thing that all humans have in common. And so the thought was to create a structure that looks like home, shining on the top of the hill, like a house on the prairie or something. Yet it doesn't give you all of the things that a home provides. You're not safe from the elements like snow or heat and then interrogation, constant interrogation. So that piece really deals with the idea of what it feels like to be watched all the time and not have the wherewithal to have a life where your children can live in safety, you can go to school without any problems or, violence or drugs or whatever. And so that's what I was thinking about for that work.
When people come to the Seattle Asian Art Museum and they walk through and they see your work, what do you hope that they think about or take away? What questions do you want them to ask themselves?
I think the first question one should always ask oneself is, do I have the compassion to understand somebody else's life? There's such a lack of compassion in our politics right now. There are so many wars being fought all over the place. Considering that the climate is really making the earth really hot and we are blowing up bombs, and then the forest fires on the West Coast and the flooding in Pakistan recently and the cyclones and the hurricanes. It's just like it boggles my mind that people don't think that whatever we do impacts other people. And so I want people to realize that I am giving them an introduction into something they may find alien. But maybe if they cross that hump, they could connect, research, and become interested in other cultures and realize how much they have in common with those people. And so maybe it's the connection I want to make. I want people to understand that dialogue allows for understanding. If you are defensive already and you're already scared of anybody who is different from you, then you will always be fearful. I think the real question is, can you be curious? Can you be interested in trying to find out, maybe they have something in common with me. I mean, we all crave love. We all crave safety for our families. And I think that's what I want people to take away, the connectivity that we can create.
Anila Quayyum Agha is the artist behind Geometry of Light, which is on display at the Seattle Asian Art Museum until April. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Malia.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.